Get the inside track on 20 top business trends for 2020 from Joel Block. Joel's insights bring Wall Street to your street so you can profit from the inside in 2020. Just text the word TREND to 72000. That's 72000 and download your free copy today. Grab your phone and get the inside track on business trends that affect you and your business. Just text the word TREND to 72000 for your copy now. This is Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. Insights to give your business the inside track. And now, here's your host, Joel Block.
It's always amazing to me that real-life attorneys get juries to say the verdict that they're hoping that they say, just like the attorneys on TV. Now, TV we know is all fake and scripted, but here's an attorney with us right now to share the real secrets, the real inside track about how juries respond and how attorneys work those juries. Welcome to the show, Wayne Schoeneberg. Nice to have you with us.
Joel, good to be with you.
Hey, listen, man, there is a lot of art to your business. So I'd like you just kind of open the book a little bit and share a few things with us on how this works and what happens. Because those of us that have ever been in the system in any capacity as jurors or anything else, just have to marvel at what you guys do.
Well, it's part art and part science. It's not something that you really are born into. I attribute a lot of my success to a fellow by the name of Charlie Shaw. Charlie was a famous lawyer when I first started practicing law, and just luckily, just by a stroke of luck, I got to know him when I was in high school because my mother used to work in the Recorder of Deeds office. And if I wanted the car to go to high school, I had to take my mother to work. And so when I'd come back, I'd go into the courtroom and this guy by the name of Charlie Shaw would be in there working his magic. And he sort of adopted me from an early age. Now, the problem is I tried my first 3 or 4 jury trials trying to be Charlie Shaw, and that didn't work. But here's what I learned. You have to start the trial with the attitude that the jury is there to help you. A lot of people go into a trial and they're afraid of a jury trial. They're afraid of what that jury is going to do to them or to their client or to their case because they don't have confidence either in themselves, they don't have confidence in their case, they don't have confidence in their clients. And you have to get over that fear that the jury and that thought that the jury's working against you. Those 12 people have been selected. Well, first you start sometimes with 100 people and you start asking them questions. And I'll talk a little bit about that, about how that process works and what I do in that process. But those people who come there, and nobody comes there wanting to be on a jury or be selected for jury duty, or very few people do. But they're there to do a job, and they want to, it's human nature. They want to do what's right, and they want to come to the right decision. So what you have to do is explain to them from the opening questions in voir dire why the right thing to do is to decide for your client. A voir dire, as you know, is the jury selection process, and it's done different ways in different jurisdictions. In Missouri, we start with a pool. We don't do that individual thing that you see on television where they have one juror come in and
right. No, we do a pool in California too.
Okay, so we're asking questions of 50 people. Before you start, you have to have your story. Let me put it to you differently. Let me run to the end of this story. The hero in the jury trial story, the hero in the event that's going on there, is the jury. So you have a protagonist, you have an antagonist, and you have a hero who comes to save the day, and that hero is the jury. When they see the injustice that is being done to your client, they want to step in and stop that injustice. So the whole process in my theory is to set up the jury from the very beginning to be the hero in the story. So you start by telling. Go ahead.
So I can imagine that attitude must permeate the way that you deal with those people and the respect that you show those people, and they must feel it.
Oh, well, I once had a bailiff tell me, he said, I've never seen a voir dire like that. I thought you were going to get in the jury box with them.
Okay.
Yeah. So you start out with 50 strangers, and the judge starts the case by giving them a little synopsis, as little as possible. He might say, Mr. Smith here is charged with murder in the first degree, or the state alleges that Mr. Smith molested this child, or John Jones claims that Dr. Goodknife cut out the wrong liver and he's forever injured. So they have a little synopsis and they immediately come to an opinion. Oh, it's one of those medical malpractice cases where those people are just trying to hit the jackpot and make a lot of money, and you can see it on their faces. You can see their bodies' language shift. If you do criminal law, and that's all I do anymore, you immediately see people look at the defendant when the judge says he's charged with molesting a 15-year-old girl. Nobody looks at him and smiles and nods. They all get that bad look on their face. So you start by, and the state, of course, goes first with the voir dire, but you find what it is. You find the weakness in the other person's case or the strength in your case, and you start at the very beginning by asking them questions. You know where you're going with this, and you ask them questions that start getting their minds to agree with your point of view. Right off the top of my head, Joel, I can't think of anything.
Let's think about how that happens. And by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but I was on a jury one time, and I actually was the foreman of the jury. And
I'm not surprised.
Well, and we convicted the guy. I mean, we got a unanimous agreement. So I've been through this process, and I will tell you, as a juror, these 12 people who came from enormously different backgrounds, that were not friends during the case and are not friends after the case, we had a job to do. And I will tell you, these people took this job as seriously as I've ever seen anybody take any job. It's one of the most remarkable things that came out of it for me was how seriously people took our system. Absolutely.
That's the thing that bothers me. One of the things that bothers me about the attitude about jury duty. Nobody wants, that's a mistake we make. We call it jury duty. It ought to be jury privilege. But everybody has the wrong attitude about it. And once they get on, they really, really, really work hard to come to the right decision. And I will tell you that I think 95% of the time they do. There are some errors.
Yeah, listen, most of the time the jury gets it right. Most of the time. And, I will tell you that one of the really extraordinary things about my experience was that there was a judge that came into the jury waiting area. Like 400 of us are sitting in like a big room, and then they take, say, 50 or 100 people and they put them in a courtroom and they start going through the picking process. And this judge at 8:00 in the morning comes in and says, thank you very much for coming here. I know this isn't fun. You got many more fun things to do, but we need you. He proceeds to explain why they need us. And when he explained it, everybody kind of caught on. And what he basically said was, and this is a long time ago already, and I still remember it. He said, we try to get the attorneys to settle the case so we don't use up a lot of resources, and we remind them that we have a bunch of crazy people downstairs ready to make the decision for you if you cannot make this decision for yourself. So truthfully, we hope we don't need you. We really use you as leverage to get other people to be rational. And that, you ever heard that before?
No, I haven't.
that judge, it was remarkable. And you know what? That really elevated the role of the jurors. I mean, boy, talk about the hero. I mean, the jurors really do have all the power in that when you think of it like that.
Absolutely. The jury is the hero in the story. They save the day. And you're right, they do. I can't, I've tried probably now 250 jury trials, and I can't think of one where they got it totally wrong. Now, I've had any number of people that we thought were going to be found guilty, found not guilty.
So they are on the side of not guilty.
Yes. They did their job properly. They applied the reasonable doubt theory.
Yeah.
I've had people who truly were not guilty who were found not guilty, but I have never had a person who was factually not guilty found guilty. I've never had a wrongful conviction. So I've had convictions where you think, oh, that was so close. They could have let the guy off, but they didn't. If you don't mind, I'll tell you a story.
Go ahead. Let's have the story.
All right. This is a drug. If I'm not mistaken, it's a drug possession case. And the evidence wasn't real strong. So we go in to pick a jury, and I look out into the crowd, and here's this woman who I'm pretty sure I know from the community, and I'm pretty sure that she is a hardcore drug user. But they asked the questions, anybody know Mr. Schoeneberg? No. Nobody raises their hand, or she doesn't anyway. And so I go through the thing, and I'm thinking, maybe I'm wrong. I go back, and we go to have the trial, and the jury goes back to deliberate, and they're back there a couple of hours, and finally they come back with a conviction. She ended up on the final 12, and they come back with a conviction. Guy's taken away, and afterwards she comes up to me and starts talking to me, and I realize that in fact she is who I thought she was. She's this drug user and a known kind of drug character around town. And I said to her, I would think that with your history you would have voted not guilty for the guy. She said, oh no, he was clearly, the facts showed he was clearly guilty. And I just,
it's a funny thing. I've actually seen the same thing, that the people that are the closest to the situation of the person who's accused is the person that's the most harsh on those people, because they really know what's going on in the mind of the person. They kind of get, and that's something that the rest of us frequently don't understand.
Yeah.
Reality behind it. So that's really interesting. So how do you work these people? I mean, so we have a system. It's a great system. The fact that our congressional system is broken, the judicial system seems to be working pretty well. The legislative part isn't going that great, but the judicial part really generally does work. And maybe there's room for improvement, because there's lots of accusations that people of color don't get a fair shake and all sorts of things. And maybe we need to work harder at that. But let's say that by and large, it does work pretty well. How do you get people to see things your way?
Well, I start preparing every case for trial by looking at the other side's evidence and trying to figure out how I would get over that. Whether I was doing a personal injury case, trying to represent a plaintiff, or in a criminal case, representing the defendant, I look at the other side's case, first of all, for areas that are questionable and areas that I know that they're going to have to sell. And I come up with a kind of weave a story around it. For instance, I just had, let me tell you about a case I just had. We didn't try it, but kind of interesting. A man is living with his wife, and there is a stepdaughter who is 15 years old. And the wife believes that the man is running around with another woman, and she decides to throw him out. Now, the stepdaughter, he has sort of raised since she was 3, and she's now about 15. And she, out of the blue, alleges that he attempted to thrust his hands into her gym shorts while they were laying on the couch. Totally fabricated story. Totally fabricated. And one of the indicia of that is the fact that 2 weeks before trial, the state finally dismissed the case because they knew it was not good. So here we have a case where a 40-year-old man is accused of trying to put his hands in the gym shorts of a 15-year-old girl. Pretty ugly accusation. So I had to go and look at that and come up with, first of all, why would this girl make this up? Well, maybe she would make it up because she was angry at him because he had been the only father figure that she had known since she was 3 years old, that her real father had abandoned her. And he betrayed the trust of the family by going out with another woman and hurting the mother and also hurting the daughter. And she needed a way to get back at him for this in a very unsophisticated, juvenile way. She needed a way to get back at him for this transgression, and she made up this story.
So you're saying that you get the backstory, and that helps you to create your argument.
Yes, because once I can put that together and explain to the jury, I would say, perhaps in voir dire, I would say, now, ladies and gentlemen, have any of you ever been divorced? Well, yes, hands are going to go up. Have any of you ever been accused, rightfully or wrongfully, of running around with another person while you were married? Yeah, some hands are going to go up. Have any of you ever seen how? I can't even come up with something right off the top of my head.
Wayne, do you eliminate those people because they have experience, or
depends on how you answer, and then I will go into it further. So, Mrs. Smith, you say you accuse your husband of running around. Did he admit it? Did he not admit it? Did you get divorced? What happened? How was your relationship with the kids? Were they your kids? Were they stepkids? So I have to go into a whole lot more than that to find out whether or not I think they're qualified or whether or not they're going to see things my way. And through that discussion, Joel, to take it a step further, to go into your whole theme here of the inside track, through that discussion, I'm either winning you over and getting on your personal side or not, and then I'll eliminate you if not. So
that kind of brings up the whole issue of likability.
Oh yeah,
I remember that if somebody was cantankerous or unfriendly or disrespectful, you can't help but color your judgment. Like where you go, I don't know if I really believe what this guy's saying. It really does, because facts are not really facts. Facts are kind of like, maybe facts. And then the jury's got to determine if there really are facts. And so I remember that whole experience, and and what you're saying resonates so true for me, that either, you're likable or you're not. And by the way, that is not only in a courtroom. That has to do with everything, everywhere in your life, especially in places like sales. And all of us are in sales for some things. So being likable is really important, and understanding, seeing other people's perspective.
The old saying about people do business with people they know, like, and trust. They might not know the lawyer at the beginning, although I hope they come to know me through voir dire, because I'm going to let some of my person in there too, in the way I frame my questions. So, Mr. Higginbotham, a lot of people feel that being accused of a sex crime is a really horrible thing. And how do you feel about that? I know that I would think it's a terrible thing to happen to a person. What do you think about that? So you try and let them know a little bit who you are, or things. I'll throw in something I did, or a couple of weeks ago, I was on a trip in Vermont, and I was, picking peaches. How does that, work that in? So you want them to know you, you want them to like you, and you want them to trust you. You have to establish a relationship with those people in the very beginning. If you don't have a relationship with them from the very beginning, then you're lost.
Wayne, what I really like about this discussion is the ability to generalize what you're talking about from a specific situation, which is working a jury. You're kind of talking about picking the jury, not really working the jury, but picking them at first. But what you're talking about really applies to salespeople, marketing people, HR people. I mean, it applies in every part of our life. It applies to how we parent, how we be a spouse, how we do everything. because being likable, being believable, being trustable, and being credible, that's what you're talking about. And if they get a bad sense about you, then they're just going to stop listening, like our customers stop listening, because the jury's not your customers, but they're sort of your customers for a little while.
My customers. I'm going to ask them to buy what I'm selling at the end of this case.
Yes, you are. So in a certain way, they're sort of like your customer for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect summary, because that's what it is. These people, I have to sell them my case, my theory of the case, my outcome of the case, my result, my intended result.
I always talk about, I love selling. And, I always talk about selling that it's really very simple. It's about getting someone to say yes. And in a certain way, your whole goal is to get the jury to just say yes to your side of the story.
Absolutely.
That's that in a single sentence, a little teeny phrase, just get them to say yes. That's it.
Absolutely. And you do that in the voir dire. If I'm trying a criminal case, I will work in questions where I will make them say the words "not guilty" during the voir dire. Okay?
Oh, you really? How do you do that?
Well, you understand, don't you, that the person that sits here, Mr. Green, that's sitting here next to me, has the presumption of innocence. You understand that, don't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
And you would follow the instructions of the jury that the judge gives you, right?
Of course.
Okay. And so if he gave those instructions to you right now and you hadn't heard any evidence at all, how would you vote?
I'd say not guilty.
Okay. All right.
Wayne, you're too much. That is too funny. Now, let me just back up for a second. There's litigation or litigators, and then there's trial attorneys, and they're not the same. So, Would you kind of explain that to us? Because lay people don't always understand that not all attorneys spend their life in courtrooms with juries. In fact, hardly anybody ever does. It's very rare, really.
Yes, litigators are people who make their money doing everything they possibly can to eventually avoid going to trial. Litigators create a lot of paperwork. That's why you don't find any litigators in the criminal business, because there's nothing aside from a motion here or a few motion to suppress, a deposition here or there. There is not any out of the courtroom activity in the criminal business. In the commercial litigation, for instance, and I've done some commercial litigation. I was called one time. As a matter of fact, I met my lovely wife, Rebecca, through a situation where another lawyer called me and he said, we've got this huge case going on, and there are a number of big corporate defendants. I think there were 6 of them. And he had been representing 2 of them at the time, which was okay. And then at the last minute, with some pleadings that were filed, it became a conflict of interest for him to represent both of them. So he called me probably 6 weeks before trial and said, would you represent this company? And I'm not going to mention the company, but it was a big, nationally traded, in the news a whole lot over the past year.
Yeah. I've got an idea about who you're talking about. Yeah.
And would you represent them? And he said, all you have to do is try the case. We know you have a reputation as a great trial lawyer. All you have to do is try the case. You don't have to do any discovery. It's all done. We're gonna give you all the file boxes.
And which side were you on? You were on the side of the.
I was defending that company.
So they were the defendant.
They were the defendants. The plaintiff had alleged that they had defrauded them in a mortgage situation and had wrongfully foreclosed on their property. Yeah. And so they had title companies in and mortgage companies in, and this happened.
Being in the real estate business, there was a lot of accusations about this. These banks are not inaccurately foreclosing too much, but there was a lot of accusation about that, and so. But
to go to the end of the story, I won for my guy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well,
But
You,
so I went down. So they gave me. I had to be a dozen bankers boxes full of papers that they had generated all of this paperwork beforehand.
So the litigators generated the paperwork, and then at the 11th hour, they flip it to a trial guy who's used to dealing with the juries and the judges and the being inside the courtroom. And that's a really important distinction, that 95 or 98% of all the attorneys are litigators. They're not trial attorneys. The trial attorneys are the ones that are actually, in the courtroom working with the juries. Yeah.
So you have a lot of people who they just do litigation, and it's I say it's designed to keep you from getting to court, because it just becomes, for one thing, it becomes terribly expensive. Now, big corporations can stand it; they build it into their budget. It's not a big thing. I will tell you another story where I defended a company, again, a huge manufacturing company that you would know the name of, in a case, and to give you the short version of the case, I settled it for $140,000, which is what the plaintiff wanted. He had filed a lawsuit for like $6 million in punitive damages, and I looked at it. I looked at what his case was about. I called him up and I said, I do what you used to do, or what you're doing, plaintiff's work. I know what this case is worth. What do you want? We gave him $140,000. When I talked to the general counsel of this corporation, he said, that was really great. We had set aside $250,000 for your fees alone. I said, well, that's great. My bill at that point had come to $5,000.
Oh my God.
Because I'm a trial lawyer. I'm not a litigator. I don't want to earn $250,000, $300 an hour at a time. It's too much work for me. I want to try the case and win.
Yeah. And you mostly do criminal, right? So that's
now I do mostly criminal.
I mean, what kind of crimes? Like hardcore ones, or like DUIs, or
from a murder to a speeding ticket.
Really?
Wow. Sure. Yeah, I just got hired on a first-degree murder case, a very interesting case. If it goes to trial, I wouldn't be surprised it's one of those kind of cases that ends up on Dateline or
really.
Yeah, fascinating case, but I can't really. Certainly, don't want to talk about it here.
No, it's understood. So listen. So if somebody gets himself into some trouble, what's the first thing that a person should do? I know what I told my kids if they get in any trouble. What do you recommend?
The first thing that a person should do, if and you talk about getting in trouble, let's assume that you're apprehended by the police and accused of something. The first thing that you have to do is remember not to make any statement at all.
Right.
Now, I have friends, a client who I represent some businesses still, and guy runs a cigar store, and he always talks about if he got arrested, he'd tell him he doesn't know anything. And I keep going, Joe, no, I'm not going to say anything. Not I don't know anything. And that's the difference. Make no statement. You have no obligation to make a statement. I know you want to talk your way out of this. Everybody wants to talk your way out of this, especially if you believe you're not guilty. But you really don't know what's in the mind of the person that you're talking to. You don't know what's in the mind of that police officer who's interrogating you. You don't know whether he's talking about exactly the same thing you are. I'll give you an example. Here's a perfect example. I'm working on this case right now. Guy's indicted on 10 counts. He goes to a bar on the parking lot. We've got it on a videotape. On the parking lot, a girl approaches him, and he says, can I go home with you? You see her get voluntarily in the car. They go to his house. They have sex. She screams rape. Now, when they come to talk to him, rather than saying, I don't want to say anything, he then goes into a long story and lays out his whole story as to how he saw it.
Yeah.
I want to know what they're saying before I tell them how I saw it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to make anything up. Okay, but I don't have to tell them everything. I can withhold not evidence, but I can withhold information. Okay, if I think it's strategically okay and ethically to do so. I don't have to tell them my version of the story. So an answer to your question, the first thing is don't say anything. Just you'll have an opportunity.
If there's anything you learn from any of these reality TV police shows and reality TV, listen, the saying in Los Angeles is that reality TV is anything but the one thing that you learn is that talking does not work out well for you. And they'll find some way to twist it, turn it, reorganize it. And so I told my kids, I said, if you ever find yourself in a real serious problem and you're arrested for whatever reason, whether you do anything or not, you don't say a word and you call the attorney right away and let them deal with it. And that's just the way you got to do it. And I think everybody would be well off to take that great advice.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And somehow we've come in society to think that that's a bad thing to do. It's a constitutional right. People have given their lives for your right not to say anything.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, listen, we're all about the inside track. This has been the inside track on some of the cool things that happen in your business, which is not well known to a lot of us. Usually we talk about business things, but there was a little bit of business here because the jury ends up being your customer. And that's an interesting kind of a parallel that exists for you. So we're all about the inside track, the inside insights, and then profit from the inside, the way that people profit from the information that we share with them. So I want to just say thank you to you for participating with us and sharing a little bit. And you're just a real gentleman.
Well, it's been fun.
Well, great. Well, listen, Wayne, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to, being in touch another time.
All right, Joel, I'll see you at Influence.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Profit from the Inside with Joel Block. For more insights and to learn more, visit joelblock.com.
How about a shout out and a giant thanks to my podcast producer, David Wolf, and his team at Podcast and Radio Networks. Profit from the Inside simply wouldn't be what it is without David and his team. For more information or to learn how you can launch and produce your own podcast, reach out to podcastandradio.com.
Get the inside track on 20 top business trends for 2020 from Joel Block. Joel's insights bring Wall Street to your street so you can profit from the inside in 2020. Just text the word TREND to 72000. That's 72000 and download your free copy today. Grab your phone and get the inside track on business trends that affect you and your business. Just text the word TREND to 72000 for your copy now.